Hello Hunters, Autobot Dawson here, ready to roll out a quick guide video for you. And today I'm just kind of summarizing once again what my actual Nightstalker Hunter setup is. What I like to call my infinite invisibility build. And in fact, showing you how it works in tandem with Gyrfalcon Hauberk now that, after the last few weeks, it has been re-enabled in the game. So we're just going to go through this quickly. First of all, for the super, right now, Mobius Quiver is the better option for most content because both it and Deadfall have an 8-second timer on its tether, but Mobius Quiver gives you better damage output and better ad clear. However, starting next season, it's been reported that Deadfall is going to go up to 12 seconds for the weaken timer, and Mobius Quiver will go down to 6 seconds. So at that point, Mobius Quiver will probably be better for solo stuff or items where there aren't really big DPS checks needed. Instead, you can use it for ad clear, whereas Deadfall will become the prime choice for DPS, especially with Divinity getting nerfed down to 15%. All right, now here's where we really get into the bread and butter of the invisibility layout. So Gambler's Dodge is the most important ability here because when you perform your class ability, you are fully recharging your melee ability so long as you dodge near an enemy, which is usually not a problem at all. This is a very generous range on how close you need to be to that enemy as well. You don't have to be right up on them, and it just needs to be any enemy. Movement ability, really, it's whatever you prefer, but triple jump for PvE usually gives you more mobility options, in my opinion. You want to run with Snare Bomb here, of course, is actually the only melee option for Void in here. And then for your grenade, again, it doesn't necessarily matter. Vortex Grenade I like for damage. Suppressor Grenades I do like for the fact that it does suppress targets. So it's kind of whatever you prefer on that as well. I currently have Vortex Grenade on. And for our aspects, we want to go with Trapper's Ambush and Vanishing Step. Vanishing Step gives you 2 fragment slots. Trapper's Ambush gives you 1. What Vanishing Step does is it makes dodging making you invisible. So your class ability now makes you invisible when you use it. The great thing about this is that now when you're dodging near enemies, you're going invisible. You're also recharging your melee, which thanks to Trapper's Ambush, your melee also makes you invisible. But you can also use your Smoke Bomb or your Quick Fall, which is sort of the big slam, similar to Shatter Dive for Stasis, to make your allies invisible as well. So this is a fantastic choice when it comes to using that invisibility. Not to mention, when you use Quick Fall on your Trapper's Ambush, you do get weakened on the enemies as well. All right, and then for the fragments here, Echo of Persistence is really the one that's most important because void buffs applied to you now have increased duration. So that is absolutely essential. Invisibility is included in there. I like to use Echo of Expulsion because it causes void ability final blows to cause a target to explode. You don't have to run this if there's something else you prefer. It's not necessary for this invisibility build. But it is an option. And then this is where I get into the fun factor here, but this actually has great synergy with Gyrfalcon. Echo of Obscurity. Finisher final blows also grant you invisibility. So now to summarize, we go invisible when we do a finisher, we go invisible when we do our dodge, we go invisible when we do our melee, and our dodge replenishes our melee. Now how can we consistently keep our dodge up? Well, you want to make sure for this build, if you're going all invisibility, like I am in this case, 100 mobility. Because what that does is that gives you a 40% increase in the recharge speed of your Hunter class ability. So now, most of the time, here's the loop, right? You dodge, you go invisible. You dodge near an enemy, so your melee is charged. By the time you use your melee ability, Invis, usually, your class ability is already fully replenished so that you can repeat that loop. Not to mention, you go invisible doing finishers, which is where Gyrfalcon's Hauberk comes in, our exotic of armor choice for this particular build. Your weapons gain bonus damage briefly after you emerge from being invisible. Great idea, great perk there, but not even really the point when it comes to invisibility here. So now, not only do we get a damage buff, but here's where the synergy with the finisher comes in. When you are invisible and use a finisher, you and your nearby allies gain a reserve overshield and improved class ability regen. These reserve overshields can be deployed by using a class ability. So you not only give your whole team and yourself an overshield, but also improved class ability regen, which then means you can go invisible faster and faster and faster. It's all about the chain. So what do? We go invisible, we do a finisher. Gyrfalcon actually has a secret perk that makes enemies volatile when you do a finisher. So now you've made an enemy volatile, damaging and destroying other enemies. While you're invisible, you're then able to finish another enemy. Bam! The loop repeats. You keep getting the overshield. You keep getting Gyrfalcon's weapon damage buff because you're constantly coming out of invisibility. It's a very effective build, you guys. Highly recommend using it. We're not going to get into weapons. You can use really whatever you want for this build. That's why I wanted to keep it simple. But I will say, if you want to utilize Heart Shadow, if you've been lucky enough to get Heart Shadow to drop from the Duality Dungeon, it's actually a phenomenal choice for this build. It's a lot of fun because you do get remaining invisible grants this weapon increased damage for a brief duration, and hitting a target with this weapon's projectiles while Shot in the Dark is active weakens them. So you go heavy attack then light. Perfect, because heavy attacks made with full sword energy turn you invisible and fire exploding void projectiles. So you're going invisible every time you use your heavy. You're getting the damage buff from Shot in the Dark, and you're also getting the damage buff from Gyrfalcon's Hauberk. So everything synergizes really well with this build, you guys. I like to call it my Infinite Invisibility build, or recently I've been calling it Kingslayer from the Void build in honor of my title this season. It's meant to be a build that is not only useful for in-game PvE, because, as you know, invisibility is a huge tactical advantage on the battlefield, especially when it comes to reviving your teammates and positioning. But it's meant to have that fun factor, too. To me, it's a lot of fun, sort of having the power fantasy of you're a Nightstalker hunter. You know, when I think of that, I think of going invisible, going into the shadows, and emerging, defeating your target, going back into the invisibility immediately with your finishers and your class abilities and your melees, and just poking out of the shadows to defeat a target, come right back out. Using whatever favorite weapons you have is absolutely the way to go. So let me know down below, you guys, how are you liking the Gyrfalcon's Hauberk Exotic? And how do you like to set up your Nightstalker Hunter class? Thank you all so much for watching. This is Autobot Dawson, rolling out.